Estate and CX, the UK's #1 estate agency podcast discussing the future of estate agency, entrepreneurship and business, host Mark Burgess and Rob Brady. So in this episode of Estate and CX, it's slightly a bit different today. Mark and I sat down together on our own, and we're just going to recap what we've found speaking to clients and agents across the country over the last month and see how they're getting on. Hope you enjoy.
Okay, Rob. So I wanted to do this podcast really about stuff that may be relevant to all agents out there, but that we're discovering at Iceberg, because obviously Iceberg has become something that is beyond just doing, say, software for a estate agency. You know, We've got websites going on, we've got coaching going on with agents, we've got obviously the software, we've got AI, we've got this, that, we've got all these sorts of things going on and loads of conversations with agents in the marketplace. So over the last month, let's say, what's some of the things that have happened that you've noticed with estate agents, or conversations that you've had that may be relevant to some of the listeners that are tuning in today?
I'm finding, if we put it straight away, a simple one, we had the recent workshop we did for Estate and CX, the 18 cores.
Julia Langkraehr, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that was like, and what I've loved about it is so many of the agents came with the preconceived ideas that they had core values and they had a mission and a vision and they had pretty much, I have morning meetings. So they came to that with a preconceived ideas. I'd probably say, 3 or 4 of them were like even messaged and said, look, I'm interested in the whole program, but like,
Don't need that.
do I need to do this? And actually off the back of it, how much of them have actually really started to develop the actual true meaning of a core value and what that actually means and how you articulate to your teams. And then when you do that, how you get the response from the team. Like, a great one I actually had was a client who we've had for about 4 or 5 years. He's had big stresses with his team. He struggled with the team in the fact of, I employ people, I try and be their friend, but sometimes emotionally connected. But then always struggles to get rid of the bad eggs. And like one of his successes he had off the back of the workshop was, off the back of it, I realised this person was in the wrong seat and actually not suitable. So I went back and sadly got rid of him. Whereas that for him would have dragged on for months and months and months and caused him a lot of stress outside of work.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because obviously I came along to that workshop as well, and I've known Julia a long time. She helped us years ago with our core values and how that all works. And I think, having been through it myself and then watching the agents in the room, it's interesting because, as you say, there's a lot of people that feel like they have it. They've already done that. I've even done a course around it. It's not a problem. Or alternatively, do I really need that? There's only 5 of us in a room. It sounds a bit American. But going through the process of figuring out how that actually works inside your business, as opposed to just being some words on a wall.
Yeah.
It helps with recruitment, retention of staff, making sure that people can do the job to the way that you would expect it to be done, and all of these, so many things. How you identify good members of staff, how you hire, how you fire, how you promote, how you end up having good conversations with people, whereby you're having those conversations before it's reached the stage where you're blowing up over nothing. So many things that got addressed in that workshop. What I was really amazed and proud to see was that at the beginning you had maybe, how many agents were in there? 35, 40 agents that really and truthfully, if you really pressed them on the matter, would have struggled to differentiate themselves from each other.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, not one of them was the same.
Yeah.
I loved seeing that. So I think, in terms of what can someone who's listening to this get from that, hearing, well, that's great, but what do I do about it? What were some of the main points of that workshop you think that were enlightening for people?
First part is the meaning of core values, and actually how do you articulate that into everyday working life in your agency? Like you said, not just on a wall. The core, like the mission, like getting really understanding, digging deeper into what is actually that, what does that mean? But it was also the methodology behind, the big rocks, tasks, like things that they could implement a way and actually physically do. So from listeners taking it away, it's like if you're sat there and you've done your core values exercise and you're still frustrated with your team, like there's something that you're obviously there's missing to that. So go and explore what that means. Like how do you bridge that gap?
Yeah, and I guess there's no one right answer for how do core values work or vision or mission or anything like that. There's general themes that would probably all agree with one another, but it works if it works.
Yeah.
That's the point. And what it's supposed to do, what you're supposed to be seeing for it to work, is that your company runs like a machine around your core values. Your team could tell me your core values off the bat, no problem. You can phone any Iceberg team member anywhere in the world and ask them what our core values are and what they mean, and they'll all tell you no problem.
As I say, you're going to ask me, aren't you?
So do the core values work like that? Or is there a part of you that goes, well, not exactly like that? If it's not exactly like that, then like you need to do some more research around how core values work if you really want them to work for your company. And the same with the vision. And the vision and the mission and all of that, it's all a bit confusing for people. But, in a nutshell, vision, what you dream your company might be one day, mission, what you're doing today. So, as an estate agency might say, we want to change the way that people buy and sell property right across the world. That might be their vision. They don't have no idea how they're going to achieve it, but that's what they dream of. Yeah. Their mission right now, we're just concentrating on improving the home buying process for people in Canterbury.
Yeah.
And they're guiding lights that allow you to stay on track with what you're trying to achieve and to let the team know what the rules of the game are, what we're trying to achieve here.
I think the second part onto that is actually having a structure on taking it forward on a daily or monthly or weekly basis, which was so important from that workshop, because like having been in agency, morning meetings where I was told by this person, who's told by this person, this is how a morning meeting works. And I think some of the clients have really benefited from outside the workings of how actually a morning meeting or how you take on tasks and projects to do that are not really taught in agency. Like pretty much when you look at most trainers out there, they don't teach you about how do you build that about. It might be teaching you how to make a good phone call to try and prospect people.
Yeah.
And then so the agencies...
But it's not about... None of it is... There's not much around building a business.
Yeah.
It's more about doing the job, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I suppose that's essential when you start in a estate agency in terms of an employee or even your own business, because when you start your own estate agency business, you haven't got valuations on tap. So learning all of these techniques and how to generate more business, and it's essential for you, and it seems like the only thing you need to know. But you probably at that point, for 95% of people, don't realise you're building a business. You're not just going to do estate agency so that you earn some more money, which is what you think you're doing, and then you get through that stage. You get to the next stage whereby like you start employing people, and it's all a bit of a mess, and then maybe you start thinking like I might need a bit more structure around this, and eventually you get through that to the next stage whereby you've got a pretty good business. Then you start to realise, but I'm at a point now whereby there's nowhere really else to go with this, and you might investigate and start realising, actually, I could really do with some advice on how to build a business. I know how to be an estate agent, and I've got an estate agency here that's pretty successful and makes me a decent living. But I don't really know any of the secrets around how to build a business. And that's, I think, where things like some of the stuff that you spoke about there, and as people go through that, 18 cores accelerator program that you do with the estate agency extra, it's about bringing in people like Julia's background, building £100 million retail businesses, and ex marketing director to the Bank of New York, like people that can actually tell you, and this is how it works. If you're just trying to build a business, nothing to do with a estate agency, and now we can import it into make it relevant for you.
And so back to you, like what have you found maybe in the last month that you've been from like mine's more that side to it?
One of the main things that I've found twice in the last month is been talking to people about their, I'm going to say marketing, but when I say marketing, I don't mean what formats they're using to do marketing and what tips and techniques they're using. More basic than that, like who are you trying to reach?
Yeah.
And then I try to identify with them who their perfect customer is, which hasn't been too difficult, but then trying to also convince them that to have a perfect customer, you have to have a negative persona and you have to repel those people. Because what's happened to me in the last couple of months is that I've sat with some clients and been through that process and, you know, interrogated them to the point whereby I've been able to say, like, so is it fair to say that your perfect customer is this kind of person? Let's just say, for argument's sake, your perfect customer is somebody that is looking for experience and advice in a estate agency and a personal service, and they're willing to pay for it, as opposed to somebody that's looking for you to advertise their property on Rightmove for as cheap as possible.
Yeah.
And someone might say to me, oh yeah, I'd say that's fair. The bit that people struggle with is that, okay, but don't just tell me, yes, that's the right kind of person, but I'll take anybody, because what you'll end up with is marketing material that isn't relevant for that person. You're now still doing marketing to attract anybody, so you're still maybe writing on your website, we can sell or let properties no matter the shape or size or who you are or where you are. And so you become relevant for nobody. And you wonder why you don't get more of your perfect customer and why you keep getting phone calls from people that are comparing you to Strike. Whereas if you did marketing that was specifically for the people that we spoke about, whereby you are saying, you know, if you're the type of person that, I don't know, I'm making it up now, if you're the type of person that likes to turn left on an aeroplane, or if you're the type of person that sees value in Marks and Spencer's over Audi, and you're looking for an estate agency in the same ilk whereby you can have a personal connection with somebody and realise that that's going to be more expensive than just sticking your property on Rightmove, you might be interested in talking to us. Guess who's going to fucking inquire? Like, you're going to have less inquiries, yes, but when you get inquiries like, this is your perfect customer.
Yeah.
But those agents that I spoke to were afraid to go that far with it.
What I found quite interesting is the desperation to maybe acquire leads. You know, like the dopamine hit of, oh, there's another lead in, and but them never really coming to fruition because they're the wrong type of client. Over focusing on marketing, you might not necessarily get all the leads in, but you get the leads in for people who actually will resonate with what you've got to turn back to them.
Well, I've got a theory on it that it stems from when you're a valuer, you know, and really the main competition you've got is with that weird little bloke across the road who works in another estate agency. And like, yes, I fucking won the listing.
Yeah.
And that doesn't go away. It stays in your head. The reality is that estate agents are only really interested in winning listings.
Yeah.
As mad as that sounds, like, there's a problem for a lot of estate agencies with looking after their existing customers.
Yeah.
There's a problem with sales progression for a lot of people. Like, I'm not saying that this gets neglected, but none of it really gets the focus and the attention of winning a listing.
Yeah.
And I think leads sorts of comes into that as well, doesn't it? Like, get more leads, get more listings. We're number one. We're beating that little weird bloke in his waistcoat, right? So it's a strange thing. It's something going on in the brain there somewhere, but there's nothing logical about it, that's for sure, because logic says, like, you know, I only want to deal with the houses and the customers that are pleasant to me and I can sell and I can get through to exchange so that I can actually get paid. Yeah. But you end up with houses that are difficult to sell and customers that are wankers.
Well, actually, I sat down with a client the other day, and they've got quite a boutique estate agency, and he was a former teacher. And actually, when he profiled through the people, he actually realised that most of the people that were using his services were teachers who appreciated the bespoke service, because he related back to those because he was a former teacher himself. So, like, you know, busy professionals, when you look at teachers, they sometimes, you know, you've got marking, that sort of side to it. And he understood that. So when he was communicating back with them, everything he was talking to them about was how to make that easier, because he knew the profile of them.
Yeah.
But he never really understood that until it.
Didn't put two and two together.
Yeah, and he's like, it's mad actually. And every time I meet him, he's like, do you know what? I've just taken on our house as teachers.
Yeah.
He's like,
and but even then, that's what I'm saying. Like, then it's still they just have this FOMO of, but that's not going to be enough for me. It is going to be enough for you. It is going to be enough for you. Like, because these people are going to pay you the fee that you're asking for because you created a bespoke service specifically for them, and your marketing becomes easier because you know who to target and you know what to say and you know what the pain points are, and they can relate with it and they're happy to pay you the fee, and everybody's happy. You get the clients you want, you get the fee you want. What you don't end up with is mass market share in this, as Chris Watkin would put it, willy waving competition about, who's got the most listings on the market. Like, you don't end up in that. So if that's what you're looking for, then yeah, okay. But that doesn't, very rarely in my experience, and I've dealt with thousands of estate agents, thousands of them, very rarely does that relate to cash in the bank for people. Usually you find that when you get to speak to those people that have got that mass market share, they're struggling to make a profit out of it because they're taking on anything and everything for any fee and all of that sort of stuff.
And like, let's be honest, we've over the years of now being at Iceberg, I've seen the clients who have come through that. And what you tend to find with that is it actually relates back to stresses within workplace environments as well, amongst their teams, and not being able to deliver a service. And so, like, it's just a false way of working, and it's just unnecessary stress required in an environment. If you were to, Kerry from my previous podcast, to step back and actually assess this part to it.
Yeah.
And that question back on maybe something that I've come back for this month as well is breaking through that next boundary of we've seen a lot of agents, and I've seen some just great success stories over the last sort of month or so with clients who have just gone beyond where they thought they could go. What's your advice for someone who is maybe in that, they're just in that, they're just in the atmosphere? It's like the rocket ship's shaking and need to pierce through, but they can't necessarily see that top part there, and everything seems a bit chaotic around them. Like, what would you say your bits of advice you'd probably give back to someone who might be in that position of not to drop back down?
Yeah. So having been there myself, and obviously we've spoken to lots of agents there, and I used a similar analogy when we were talking to Kerry on the podcast that you mentioned. When you start a small business, quite often the goal is just to make a living for yourself. You're not thinking about building a massive company. It's a nice dream, but first things first. Let's not look like a complete idiot because I've just maxed out my credit cards and borrowed money off my parents to try and start this company. So you just do what you've got to do to make some money, and then gradually you take on some more people that, because you can afford to, and you go through this sort of phase whereby everyone in the company gets paid except you do. You're doing numbers that you thought would mean you were going to be loaded, but actually you didn't realise there was going to be costs and VAT returns and tax and all of this crap going on, and then people are bugging you for wage rises, and you're not even really getting that much. And then you get out the other side of it somehow, and the company's now making a bit more money, and you've got quite a nice lifestyle, and people are doing their jobs, but you still have to be involved because you couldn't just walk away and leave them to it. You know that it would all just descend into rubbish, and you've got nice staff and you've got crap staff, and getting staff's an issue, but you're through the worst of it, you feel. But actually what's happening there is that you haven't yet got a CEO or a managing director of the company. No one's actually on the top deck steering the ship. And that's a really, really critical job, because otherwise the ship's just going, it's just coasting along. Somehow you haven't crashed into any rocks yet, but that doesn't mean you're not going to. So almost from day one, but certainly if you've made it that far, you need to get the fuck up onto the top deck, and realise that your sole job is to make sure that all these people don't die when the ship hits a rock. You might still mess it up, but somebody needs to be up there on the steering wheel going, right, I've had a look ahead. It looks a bit dodgy, but my best guess is that we're heading towards that island over there, and I'm going to make sure we do it. Now, you lot get on with putting the stuff in the, putting the coal in the fire and pulling the oars and doing all the stuff that we need to do to make sure the ship keeps going, and I will concentrate on avoiding these rocks and getting us to that island. And you can't do it if you're also going to go downstairs and do all the jobs. What was Tom Panis say? The pilot on the plane doesn't serve the drinks, right? It's a bit of a cliche, but if somehow you've managed to get your company to that stage where, like you put it, you're in the atmosphere but the rocket's shaking, it's now time for you to figure out how to build a business. It's nothing to do with a state agency now. Like you said at the very beginning, what is this core value shit? What is this vision, mission? Like, what is all this crap?
Yeah.
Like, figure that out and the ship will stop shaking. You'll go through the atmosphere and you'll go on to wherever it is that you're supposed to go without imploding and going down.
Yeah. I think you're right in what you're saying there. I think because it's that initial, I think when you're using that analogy, it's that initial part of getting up on that stairs onto the deck and having to actually grip the spinning wheel.
What am I supposed to do? I've never built a business. How do I know what to do?
And then
here?
just go...
Just make it your job.
Like you said, the bit on that I think is nice. There's a lot of people who don't necessarily have the anchor or the vision, like the island in the future, to go down the route of like, right, this is our destination.
All of that will get figured out for you if you really embrace building a business. Talk to you. You've run a 18 Cores Accelerator program. It goes on a year. It shows people how to build an actual business. If you don't want to talk to Rob for whatever reason, read some books, find some other business accelerator programs. There's places out there where you can figure out how to build and run a business. Nothing to do with a state agency. Don't bother looking for the answer inside a state agency.
Yeah.
Like, because the only people that know how to do it are the people that built the corporate estate agencies, and they're long gone out of the game and wouldn't tell you how to do it anyway. As much as you don't like a corporate estate agency, they've built phenomenal businesses.
Yeah.
There's no one that's got the answer for you that's currently doing exactly what you do and is having to do valuations every day and hold the ship together. They haven't got the answer for you. They haven't been through it.
Yeah.
All right.
Leave it there today.
Yeah, I think so. We'll try and do a few more of these where we can just catch up with people and let them know what we're finding out.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to this Estate Agency X podcast. Can you make sure that you're actually subscribed to this podcast channel if you liked the content? It helps us massively to get better guests, and it just helps us generally. So you might think you're subscribed, but just have a double check, whatever your podcast platform of preference is, that you're actually subscribed, and then that way we can continue to grow the channel and get better and better guests for you.